Little sound check. Is that working? Nice. Thank you. Good night. First of all, thanks for everybody being here. Little FOSS4G NA 2024. Some quick numbers for you guys real quick. Looks like as of a couple days ago, we had 394 total registered from 7 countries, 40 US states, 4 Canadian provinces. 61% are first timers, 31% have been 1 to 5 times, 6% have been 6 to 10 times, and 1.5% have been 11 plus times. Wow, that's an elite group right there. My name is Brian Monheiser. I am one of the co-chairs for this year's event. I got sweet talked into this by Bill Dollins and Eddie Pickle, and it was hard to tell them no. And I'll cover that here in a little bit too, but I want to welcome you guys to St. Louis, Missouri. I also want to be really clear about something. I am not this guy. I'm a talker, not a speaker. So you're going to get a talker. If you like a speaker, I can point you to his videos online. They're stunning. You know, the whole geospatial landscape is growing and changing, and everybody knows why that is. But I think the one thing that I realized recently, and the reason I realized this was, and not to somber the room, so everybody hear me say it, and then we're going to get over it. A week ago, the Sunday before Labor Day, very close family friend of ours lost their 15-year-old son. So I own a 17-year-old son, so when you see that, it even hits home a little bit harder. I was supposed to spend all of last week putting together some amazing slide deck that was going to talk about the value of St. Louis from a geography or geospatial perspective, but I'm actually sitting in front of a bunch of people actually already understand that. What it made me realize was it's about these relationships, right? I didn't get here without all of the relationships I have. I didn't get the career that I have. So I got this moment of reflection last week as I sat through a funeral service where I started going, it really is about people, and it really is about your blessings, and it really is about all the awesome stuff that happens in your life. And it started making me think about, what do I want to talk about? Well, my first thought was, I'm not going to talk about anything. I'm going to call Bill Dollins and Eddie and tell them find somebody else, because I don't want to put it together. But then those relationships are so important to me that I was like, that can't happen. So I'm going to put something together, and I'm going to make it something meaningful, and it's going to be meaningful to me. And I really think it's about the relationships we have. I'm really interested every time I meet somebody and I learn their story, especially folks that are in our community. I've worked with a lot of you in one way or another, and I am a better human and a better professional because of that. And I want to build more of those relationships. I'll bet I don't know half of this room, and that's okay. I'd love to learn that half. And I'll bet there's half of you in here that don't know half of the room either. So if we could spend some time working on those relationships and learn about one another, I think that's going to be the secret in growing this industry. Show of hands, how many people actually know who I am? That's a stroke on the ego. I'm Brian Monheiser. I want to be very clear. I've already won an award. I was the first one to use AI at this conference. So, point for me. The only one of those pictures that's real is the left and the bottom right corner. Just kidding. I've lived in a number of places all over the country, and I've had an opportunity to travel. Born and raised Colorado kid, moved to Kansas to go to college, found my way into Arkansas State. If you want to have a beer sometime, I'll tell you the greatest bamboozle story of all time about how I was in a college town for 4 years and only amassed 26 credit hours. It's a really good one. My mom and dad didn't like it, but it's a really, really good one. That led to me going to spend some time in California with my Uncle Sam. He's your Uncle Sam too, except for my international friends. He's not your uncle, he's ours. Made my way to Virginia, and then I've made my way to Missouri. So I'm the proud father, if I talk about who's Brian and I talk about what I want to get from my relationships with you, who's Brian? Well, I own that 17-year-old, and I own the mom, because she's up here living by us now. I am a Marine. I'm a Marine veteran, That was 80 pounds ago, roughly, but close. I use these as my reminder sex appeal photos, like I could get there, but I won't. I attended Kansas Human College. I attended Arkansas State, I made my way to the University of Maryland after I got out of the Marine Corps. I was in school long enough to get a doctorate. I have a bachelor's. So that's relatively impressive as well. I've been in the geospatial community for a really long time. I got out of the Marine Corps and started off at Antion, and I moved along. I'll cover that here in a second. But I think what's really important too is a lot of us have overlap. A lot of us have worked in similar companies, and I think a lot of us have a lot to gain from one another based on those experiences and those relationships, both past, present, and future. I started my own company with my business partner up here in the front. He and I have traveled the globe a little bit, but I'll cover a little bit more on that here in a second. I talked about my epic failure. I found video trivia, and I found beer, and I didn't find the classroom. And so obviously that led me to this great place where I got introduced to this whole geospatial thing. So even though I didn't do good in school, I wasn't dumb. I still don't think I am. But I was a guaranteed intel field. And while I was at boot camp, some guy with a clipboard came up, they pulled me out of formation, and they said, "How do you feel about geospatial intelligence?" I had no idea what the hell the guy was talking about. My senior drill instructor gave me about 5 seconds and said, "He'll take it." So I ended up in this whole career completely on accident, but I've absolutely been in love with it. I'm now covered in map tattoos. My mom doesn't like that either. And I've gone on to do this same kind of work now for 25 years. The time when I knew that this really, really was important to me, or really, really meant something to me, was I did a deployment on the USS Boxer with the 11th MEU. During that deployment, we sent a team of SEALs out on an operation, gave them all the insights they could ever need or want about the battlefield. When they came back and got on the ship, they said, "Hey man, thanks for allowing us to be fathers, sons, brothers, and dads again." That was the first time I realized that what I was doing was really, really, really important, and I wanted to do more of it. At the very end of that deployment, September 11th happened. That was the very last day of that deployment. I was laying on the ship, on the floor of the USS Boxer, watching these videos play out in real time. I spent the next 9 months working on avenues of approach for Iraq, and there were job offers as far as the eye could see if you had a clearance and you had a background in geospatial. So that's how I ended up in good old Missouri. I was gonna come here for 24 months max. Anybody, who in here is from the Midwest? Okay, there's a secret for all of you. If you marry a girl from the Midwest, you can never leave. No, nobody told me this up until it was too late. So I took a job at NGA, and I took a job teaching in the college. So I got to teach in the same college that I went to as a Marine student. From there, I wanted to understand why we were building the systems that we were building. So I took a bit of a leap of faith and went on as a systems engineer. I am not technical. I was an analyst, but I am not technical. I still think gigawatts is something that we're using for real. And I have a really smart business partner, so I don't have to worry about it. But that opportunity at BAE really parlayed me into what got me really going in the geospatial community. And I know in an open source space, everybody goes, "Ooh, Esri, it's cool, we're all good." But what I got was I got an opportunity to be the NGA account manager for Esri working out here in St. Louis. And what came as a result of that was if you're out here in the West, you also were responsible for all the NSTs, so all the NGA support teams. So that turned into a life of travel, which was really awesome. It's not good for marriage, just tell you that one right now. And you miss time with your kids, but I did get an opportunity to cruise around the world a whole lot, and I think I learned a lot and met a lot of people because of that. Again, going back to the value of relationships. Anthony, my business partner, and I were together most of the time on those trips. That's how we started brainstorming what we thought we could do or should do when we had the cojones to go out on our own. I She's not here, but there's a woman named Jen Marcus, who's now at the Taylor Geospatial Engine, a lovely human, another person that's really impacted my life. But she sits down with me and she goes, hey, you should try this open source thing out. It's like, what are you talking about? She's like, oh, it's growing, everybody wants to do it, you should try it out. It's like, I don't know, it's really hard to leave Esri, super comfortable, not a lot of fear. And she made a statement to me that I won't repeat in this room, but it wasn't a nice statement. I hadn't had a girl talk to me like that before. Guys, for sure. Drill instructors, 100%. A female, never. But I took a leap of faith again, and I came over and worked on what was one of the coolest teams I'd ever been a part of. Now, I had never really looked at any other technology except for Esri up until this point. But I started realizing that all of these really amazing people in the open source community, that their resume was on GitHub. Their value was out there for everybody to see. The technology they were building outpaced a lot of the other things that were out there that we considered to be the gold standard. So I got really excited. I came in with the Boundless team. It was open plans when I first got here. And we started growing their entire federal business practice. Lucky for us, we had all of these other things kind of happening in parallel. NGA was interested, In-Q-Tel was interested, large companies like Motorola wanted to be investors. And I kind of got excited and started to realize there's a there. And I wanted to figure out how I could be part of this community and how I could really make a change. Helped grow that space for Boundless in a significant way and got to do some really cool stuff to include working on the UN's OpenGIS initiative. Again, another opportunity for Anthony and I to travel to Africa and to Italy and a couple other places. I was also super excited to find out that there was a whole lot of folks in this space already working on these things. And I knew a lot of these people from all the work that I had done up until this point. And I was like, okay, this is really, really cool. And so I wanted to stay engaged and kind of tied into this space and figuring out how I could keep growing it or how I could keep contributing. And then Planet acquired Boundless, and I moved on to work for a gentleman named Tony Corderero, who said he was going to be in the room and hiding so that I couldn't call on him. But I told him all I needed is his name. At any rate, wonderful man that brought me in, and the reason there's no reference to this up here is because a lot of the stuff we were doing, we didn't talk a whole lot about outside. But what was really cool about that opportunity was he brought me over. I got there towards the end, and there was an opportunity for an M&A event. I wasn't ready to switch jobs right away, but TQ said, hey man, help me out with this thing. Help me make it squeaky clean. Let's grow it this last year. Let's make it perfect. And then we'll figure out what we figure out after the M&A event. I was very lucky because in that M&A event, he sent me off with a paycheck that I didn't earn, or a shares check that I didn't earn. But what that allowed me to do was it put me in a position to go try some stuff on my own. So once again, we start talking about the value of those relationships. I had somebody who believed in me enough to bring me in, knew before they brought me in that they were kind of setting me up for a surprise, but then took care of me on the way out and actually set me up so that I could go try my own thing. So I'm forever grateful to him for that opportunity, because then that gave Anthony and I an opportunity to go off and do our own thing, because you can't just go do your own thing without a little bit of cash in your pocket. So Anthony and I have been working on our own thing. I'm not here to promote my own thing. I don't want to talk about it. The value it was about the relationships and how we got here. So I think the really important piece is, why are we in St. Louis, right? I think we all know. The real reason behind all of this is Nadine, I guess, had reached out to Eddie and to Guido and said, hey, we're doing this geo-resolution thing. It's going to be on Thursday. We know your thing's 3 days. Why don't you come and do it all at the same time? And let's grow this opportunity in St. Louis to have kind of a geo-focused week. Would love to see this come back in out years. Would love to hear everybody's honest feedback after this is over. What did we do well? What did we not do well? What did St. Louis do well? I see Tracy Wellpley sitting in front of me from Greater St. Louis Inc., which is our economic development arm. All of these questions and answers and comments really, really matter to that group, right? What can we do to be better or the best? Or what could we do to create future years events that are maybe specific to a focus or to a vertical, right? But why are we really here? Whenever, and I think these stories have now been out for a couple years now, but everybody saw this kind of uptick in the geospatial market. I think everybody in this room knows it, but people in St. Louis started to learn it. And I think people in other cities are starting to learn it as well. And it was like, oh, this geospatial thing is really interesting. Anthony and I have an office inside of the Post building here in town. I don't know if John's here, and I don't want to embarrass him, but it's not embarrassing because it's awesome. But he came to us and said, I want to do geospatial stuff. So what do you mean? He's like, I don't know, I just want to do geospatial stuff. That's like me going, I want to do fitness. You just don't do fitness. You gotta have some goals. But what was really interesting was, and you guys that went to the B2B session last night got to listen to Mr. McKelvey speak. So when I asked John, what are you guys already good at? Well, he's business partners with Jim McKelvey. They got FinTech figured out. So I was like, cool, how about spatial finance? He's like, that's a thing? I'm like, it is a thing. I want to figure out how we work on that together. He then said, I go, what else you good at? He goes, we're into commercial real estate. I go, have you ever considered smart buildings or smart cities, or that's another geospatial problem too, and something we can work on. So what we're starting to see is that there's obviously these growth opportunities, and I think the thing that's important for us here in St. Louis, it's not just tied to national defense. NGA is a major anchor tenant in that, but they're not the only things, they're not the only reason that we're seeing geospatial growth. I think everybody's seen this chart, right? It's kind of really, really impressive, and Matt Force is the one that put it together. It was so impressive that I had to cut it into little chunks and make different slides so that I could kind of half pay attention. But I think this is the real reason, right? This space is growing. Folks are realizing how to do it. But we don't teach geography in schools anymore, right? So how are we going to meet the demand of all these growth areas? And I think the answer to that's in this room, or in the connections that this room has. The other reason this space is growing is because NGA made a commitment to a new facility here. They have been here since the beginning of time, and they've been kicking tail in St. Louis ever since. But they did make a commitment to St. Louis, and they did make a commitment to a new facility at the tune of, it was 175. I think it's exceeded that now at this point. I'm not 100% sure. But when you see that economic impact to St. Louis and you realize the number of jobs that could be had, it becomes very, very interesting, and it makes St. Louis a place to be. I realized I was reading the slide before I read it to you. You need yourself a Paul Ramsey in your life. The other thing that's been growing here too is you obviously heard that there was a significant investment from the Taylor family. Who, by a show of hands, is familiar with that investment? Okay, so not a lot of you. So Andy Taylor, Taylor Holdings, or Enterprise Holdings, so Enterprise Rent-A-Car, has made commitments in the past around ag tech and around biotech, and has now made a commitment towards geospatial tech. There's the creation of the Taylor Geospatial Institute, which is 7 universities in the Danforth Plant Science Center. And then there's the Taylor Geospatial Engine, which is supposed to be the incubation and acceleration of that research into something that goes to market. How many of you play in the academic space or the research space? We need to make sure that we're making connections for you guys, because I think that's a really good opportunity, right? And there's a lot of really good stuff happening there. It's funny because everybody here, or the new to St. Louis, or the new to geospatial, started going, oh wow, this is a brand new thing. But I wrote a blog on this right before Geo went a couple years ago, talking about the existence of NGA the entire time, of the fact that we have USGS down the road, of the fact that we have Transcom across the river. We've got a lot of opportunities, from transportation logistics to fintech to city planning. There's a whole lot that we could be doing, and St. Louis is going to start working on those other verticals. I, again, think that it's going to take a connective fabric that's only found in rooms like this one. So I want us to start making sure that we're finding ways to connect. If we haven't connected, I don't know how we do that better, but I think that's something we need to definitely be focusing on. And then the one thing that I want to offer up too is I would appreciate thoughts or ideas from this audience of how we go out and build the next thing. Do we do another week? Do we do a day? Where do we do it? How do we do it? When do we do it? I know we'll have more FOSS4G NAs, we'll have more FOSS4Gs, and we're gonna have GeoInts, and we're gonna have other meetups and gatherings, but what are the other things that we could do where we can start to elevate the opportunity and exposure? I think the other one thing too that I wanna bring up is, I talked about the fact that we don't have geography taught. I think it's like 17 states now. So I'd also ask the audience, how do we solve that problem? Because we've got a real big problem in terms of a talent pipeline going forward, and where are we gonna find those people? We have a diversity problem, so where are we gonna fix that, and where are we gonna find those people? How many in this room are engaged with some group of people below 12th grade? So we're talking like 12 hands out of a few hundred. I think that's part of the problem, and that's not a dig on anybody that didn't raise their hands, but what are the things that we could be doing to engage? I get involved just because I care about it, but I go to my son's school, but that's it. I don't get into a whole lot of other stuff. I work with other partners who are working on those things, but how are we gonna do more of that, and what should we do to increase that opportunity or increase that exposure in the geospatial space? I don't know that I have an answer, and if I did, I would tell you. But I think, again, that answer lives in this room or lives in rooms like this. And so I want to start figuring out ways where we can start to do more engagement with more people, more young people. I think that's going to also be the feeder system for the universities, right? You're not going to have kids going into these new geospatial programs like the ones we built at UMSL or the things that are tied to TGI. We got to start getting some folks interested in this stuff long before it's time to go to college. And there are programs working on that, and I'm happy to connect all the right folks and people that want to get involved. But I also argue when you go home, you're gonna have to do some of that in your own spaces. We gotta bring some of those people to the table. I didn't make an hour-long keynote because I'm not a speaker, I'm a talker. And I was really, really interested in people getting together. And so I wanted to end my talk early, and the reason I'm doing that, I'm bamboozling the planning team, is because I wanted everybody to spend some time networking. Everyone's gonna run off to sessions, everybody's gonna grab lunch. I would love to see people in here spending some time talking to one another. Go find somebody you don't know. If you wanna meet somebody and you don't know them, come ask. There's a whole lot of people that are in here that know those answers. The one thing I also wanna say is, there was a number of people that put this event together, and it's God's work. I watched and I was the least helpful out of everybody. But the group of people that put this stuff together and work on the planning and are making phone calls and getting all this ready, it really takes a lot from them. So if you were on the planning committee, would you do me a favor and stand up? There's more. Yeah, thank you. I bring that up because the thanks is warranted, but I think the other thing I'd suggest, you can dig a ditch a whole lot faster if everyone's got a little shovel versus 2 or 3 people with big shovels. And so we could use some folks on these next ones. We could use some folks helping out with a lot of the different things that are going on. So if you want to get involved, if you want to help, I think that would make a real difference. I know volunteering is hard. I know volunteering takes your time, but we'd really appreciate that. That is it for me, but I want to spend some time. I'm going to go walk around and meet people that I don't know. And I want you guys to do the same, because I think that's the most important thing that we can walk away from this week, is having met a bunch of new people. Good? Good, thank you.